Welcome. I think most of you know me, but in case you don't, my name is Alay Yajnik, and I want to congratulate you for investing in yourself and your firm for the next hour. So please approach what you're going to hear today with an open mind. Some of these ideas might make you uncomfortable, or they might fly in the face of what you might have read on the internet, for example. But this stuff absolutely works. It's worked for decades, and it's going to continue to work. Um, Now you're going to get out of today what you put into it. So go ahead and make sure you're focused. Your emails and your chats and all those distractions are closed. Your phone is set to stun, and that you've got a drink, pen and paper handy because we're going to need that today, and that you bring your A game. For those of you that have been on my webinars before, this webinar is different from the ones that I normally do. Normally when I do these webinars, I share like lots of best practices and tips, proven ideas, that kind of thing. But the thing is when we're going through times like we're going through right now, adversity can be, it's called adversity for a reason. It's really hard to deal with. And so all those tips and tricks and best practices and techniques and all that stuff, that's all totally worthless unless four things are in place. Once those four things are in place, then you can start to implement and do things in your firm to take things to the next level. But without those four things, all the stuff I teach, I can teach it till I turn blue and it's not going to matter. So what we're doing today is we're focusing on those four keys to overcoming adversity. It applies, yes, to the current COVID-19 situation, but it applies anytime you're dealing with something tough, whether it's a recession, whether it's something personal that's really challenging. Maybe you're trying to launch your practice and you're really struggling with that. Or maybe you have a pandemic that you're dealing with that has you sheltered in place for the last several weeks, and you're trying to manage your firm through all of that. So that's what we're going to be covering today. Again, go ahead and get comfortable with that chat box. We are going to be using it quite a bit. So that's going to be your primary way that you want to ask questions and participate throughout the webinar. So just a little bit about me. I am currently the business development and marketing advisor to Hoag Fenton. Hoag Fenton's my biggest client. I primarily am a law firm growth expert. I work with solo and small law firms to help them grow. Grow revenue, grow in size, grow in the kind of work that they do. I'm also the author of Staffing Up, the Attorney's Guide to Hiring Top Talent, because one of the key limiters to growth and one of the key enablers of growth is being able to hire fast, to hire effectively, and to hire the right people. But today we're going to be talking about some different stuff. So I'm going to ask you to dig deep today. I hope that's okay. And you're going to need some pen and paper, as I said, as this is more of a workshop, which means I'm going to do some teaching, but you guys are also going to do some doing, and you're also going to share what you're picking up from this workshop through the chat box. So this definitely is going to be interactive. I'm going to give you everything I can in the time that we have today, and then I'll show you where to get more if you want it. But I hope that's okay. So we're going to be going really fast today. I have a lot that I want to communicate to you that I think will be really of value. So take the best notes you can, but don't worry if you don't catch everything. Just really focus on the interactive exercises and the questions that we're going to be covering today, because that's what's going to drive the points home for you. And that's what's going to ensure that you take what we cover today and you implement something, whether it's in your firm or in your, building a book of business, but you implement something today. That's what's most important. So if you like, I'm going to go ahead and give you slides and a copy of the audio recording. I'll show you how you can get that at the end of the webinar during the Q&A portion. So if I somehow forget and don't bring it up, please let me know during the Q&A portion so I can give you instructions on how to get the recording and the slides. So the challenge. Adversity, as I mentioned, by its definition, is challenging. It can create anxiety. It can wear you down. It can wear your team down. It can exhaust you. It can exhaust your team. It can wear out your family. It can destroy your professional and personal hopes and dreams. It can threaten your family and it can threaten your livelihood. And that's exactly what we're dealing with today. It can also be the spark that enables you to achieve those personal and professional dreams. Challenges always create opportunities. Please remember that. The thing about tough times is that there are always some firms that are going to be thriving. In your practice area, in every practice area, attorneys are thriving. There are some firms that are doing well. Some firms are hiring. Some firms are growing, right? You might ask yourself, how do they manage that? Do they have like some special connections, or do they have deep pockets, or maybe they're using some really innovative strategy or some really killer marketing techniques to enable all of this to happen? They might be. But the thing to remember is that those are all tools, and those tools can be wasted just as easily as they can be leveraged. So what separates these attorneys from wasting their advantages and actually leveraging their advantages is something deeper and something way more personal. And we're going to go through that here right now. So I'm going to switch over to my iPad. It's going to take me just a moment, and I'm going to start drawing here. So hang on. All right, looks like that's working. So that's great. It's always good when technology works. So what we're going to be doing here is called the Law of Self-Control. And that is by Brian Tracy. Sounds impressive, and it is, but we're going to maybe approach it in a little bit of a different way. So I want you to imagine that you're down in a valley, and it's a beautiful valley, and you're looking up, and you see this mountaintop, or I should say this mountain. It's this crazy, big, imposing mountain, and you've got snow blowing off the cornices up here at the top. You might be thinking some things as you sit down there in the valley and you look up at this mountain, and it's a nice valley. There's maybe some birds flying by. Maybe there's a nice little stream that runs through the valley. We've got some trees. Don't worry, I'll add the trunks here in a minute. The point is, it's really nice down here in this valley. Really comfortable, really pretty, really peaceful, right? You're really enjoying your afternoon. The sun is out. And so as you look up at this mountain, you might be thinking some things, right? You have a reaction. You look up at this mountain, you go, huh. Now, maybe your reaction is, that's a cool mountain. I can't wait to go climb it. Let's go. Or maybe your reaction is, that looks really scary. I'm just going to kick it here and enjoy a bottle of wine and just relax. Or maybe your thought is somewhere in the middle. But whatever it is, you have some sort of reaction or thought when you look up at the mountain. So those thoughts, as it turns out, drives your feelings, not the other way around. Because what you think about that mountain, whether you think it's going to be a really tough climb, maybe one that you don't want to do, maybe one that might threaten your survival, or a great adventure, or whatever it happens to be, those are your thoughts. Those drive your feelings. Now, your feelings, how you feel about looking up at that mountain, that is going to drive you to take action. The action might be, all right, I'm going to go get my climbing gear and get up that thing. Or the action might be, you know what, I'm going to open that bottle of wine and really enjoy it. Or it might be, I don't know, I'm going to go home, right? Whatever it is, your feelings are going to lead to certain actions. And those actions, of course, are going to lead to results. So what's interesting is when we talk about success, when we talk about overcoming adversity, right? A lot of this stuff, for example, techniques you can use to get out, to grow your practice, tools that you can apply to grow your practice, a lot of that stuff is right here. It's at the action level. And if you wonder why, lots of people provide this information, right? It's out there. It's very easy to get. Why law firms don't implement this stuff, it's because of this. The thoughts aren't there yet. So you can send all the interesting information you can, but implementation requires those thoughts to be in place. Without them, the information is just going to float right by. So your thoughts really drive your results. That's called the Law of SelfControl by Brian Tracy. I'm going to pop back into our PowerPoint here. So the takeaway from that is that our thoughts drive our results. Doesn't matter really if we try and take action, because it's always going to be driven by our thoughts. So with that in mind, what I'd like you to do, we're just going to do a quick exercise and get you guys going on the chat box. So go ahead and just answer this question in the chat box. We haven't talked about self-talk just yet, but self-talk are those thoughts that are running through your mind, okay? It's what you say to yourself when nobody else is listening. It's what you say to yourself when nobody else is listening. So given our current situation, whatever's happening with you and your firm and your family and things like that, what are you saying to yourself right now when no one else is listening? Go ahead and type into the chat box, please. All right, we've got some comments coming through now. You guys have gotten fast. Wow. All right, so what is going to happen to immigration law as a field of practice? Yes. Stay motivated. Awesome. Need to lead. I love that. Yeah. So what you're saying to yourself is going to directly impact what you're going to be doing on an hourly basis, on a daily basis. Birgit says, how will this impact our retirement? Yeah. Mark's asking, where's all this going in terms of future practice and needs for meetings with clients? Yeah, exactly. Is there a new normal coming? And I think all of us would say yes. And the question is, what is that, and how do we get that to work? Ryan says, don't be discouraged. Stay the course I originally laid out and adapt as necessary. Yeah, awesome. So, sometimes we're feeling really hopeful and optimistic, and other times we're feeling kind of down. Things aren't working maybe. Our law firms aren't doing what we want them to do. We're not getting the clients that we want. And so we can get down on ourselves a little bit. And so it makes sense to think about how to change your thoughts. So if your thoughts aren't what you want them to be, if that self-talk that you're just typing in there is not what you actually want it to be, let's talk a little bit about how you can change those thoughts. Right? One way you can do that is by positive affirmations. It's a little woo-woo for some people, but this stuff, again, this works. It works for pro athletes. It works for politicians. It works for attorneys. It works for business coaches. It works for everybody. So positive affirmations are things like, I can do this, I've got this, or even things that are maybe a little bit more mellow, like just keep swimming or keep calm and carry on. Other positive affirmations is, I like myself, I love myself, I'm doing great, I'm an awesome attorney, we have an amazing law firm, I love who I work with, I love the kind of work that I do, I love my clients. Those are all examples of positive affirmations. And the more you can say that to yourself, the better you're going to feel. And the more you can say it out loud, the more impactful it's going to be. And it may sound a little weird. You might be a little self-conscious when you do it. But this stuff absolutely does work. So positive affirmations is a big one. And the other thing, especially in times like this, or whenever you're going through some adversity, just chill out and forgive yourself a little bit. Look, there's a lot going on, and most of us, if you're on this webinar, you're probably a high achiever, and a lot of us who are high achievers beat ourselves up over the 2 things that didn't go right when we did 10 other things that went really well. So just have some appreciation for yourself. I know I'm working with a lot of clients right now, and they're really, really upset about the fact that things aren't working very well in their practices, and people are sheltered in place all over the place, and some of their staff is working on old, outdated PC computers and doesn't have access to documents and things like that. But they don't think about all the other things that they've done successfully. Many of them have moved their offices on days' notice. They've successfully done that. They've continued to serve their clients. They've continued to keep their employees engaged. They've continued to make payroll. And they've continued to run their law firm, and that needs to be applauded. So when you're getting down, just relax and take some time to appreciate all that you've accomplished, because you're probably doing yourself a disservice. And when you realize all the things that you've accomplished, you're going to feel much better about the future ahead. Then maybe you'll be in a position to psych yourself up. Now, we all have different ways of doing this. For some of us, it's listening to music. For others of us, it's maybe going for a quick run, might be picking up the phone and calling someone, or can't do this so much right now, but we certainly can down the road. Might be stopping by to say hello to a colleague, or picking up the phone and calling a client, or perhaps just a friend, but really getting yourself psyched up and motivated, whatever that happens to be for you. And then if none of that is really working, or you need more, force yourself to smile. It's absolutely true, and this is probably just a reminder for a lot of you on the call, but if you fake a smile, you actually do feel better, particularly if you hold it for a few seconds or so. So smiling often is certainly something that will make you feel really good. And celebrate. Oh my gosh. Please, please, please celebrate your wins. You probably have plenty of wins to celebrate daily, if not several times a day. And celebrating those wins are going to give you the energy to get through the tough times. So please take full credit for everything that you and your firm and your staff is doing. And even if it's small little acknowledgments, take a few minutes, if nothing else, just to celebrate what you're doing and how far you've come, because that's going to help you get even further down the road. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about what happens when we're kind of stuck in that negative mindset and we just don't feel good. We feel down on ourselves. We're really worried about the future. We're down on the future of our firm. Nothing really seems to be working the way we want. How do we deal with that? Well, one exercise that you can do is you can do what's called 100 successes, where what you do is you write down your most recent 100 successes, and you keep going until you get the number 100. By doing that, you're going to find out a few things. One is you're going to be surprised at actually how quickly you got to 100 successes. It might only take you a year's worth of successes to get to 100. For some folks, because they're counting small successes, which is totally cool, it might be just a few weeks. But whatever it is, you'll be surprised at how much more time you have that you haven't tracked. You've done a lot more than 100 successes. But going through this exercise is going to renew your confidence, and it's going to take your mind off of the negative thoughts and replace them with these successes that you're thinking about. So that's one exercise. The other one, and this is kind of maybe a little bit more of an odd one, is trying to be the person you want to be. So many of us, I would say if you're on this webinar, probably everyone on this webinar tries to aspire to be better than who they are today, right? That's the idea of improving ourselves. We always want to get better. When you're feeling down about things, I find that it helps me to think about the person I want to be and start behaving that way. Because I have an opportunity, now to think about, okay, if this is the person I want to be, how can I, how would they think about these things? They'd probably think about it very differently than how I'm thinking about it now. So what would they think about, and how do I change my thoughts to match theirs? That's the thing. And so we're kind of acting like the person that we wish we were. The other benefit of that is the more often we do this, we actually transform ourselves and we become the person that we want to be. Now, if you're really dealing with persistent negative self-talk, and this is really personal, it would impact you where you just think everything is really, really bad, really bad. You're just really negative on the outlook for the future, really negative on the outlook for the present, just really, really feeling down about everything. Just remember that if you're on this webinar, you're an attorney. And if you're on this webinar, you're an attorney in the Bay Area, most likely. So what you're doing is a choice. That mental attitude, that negative self-talk, that is a choice that you're making. And when you make that choice, there's going to be consequences. But just remember that you have absolutely everything you need to be successful. And you are choosing to view that in a negative way. The other thing is you need to understand that successful, happy people find positivity, especially when things are tough, when it's hard to find positivity. They're able to find something to get positive about, something to be excited about, whether it's giving or whether it's achieving or whether it's learning. They're able to find something positive. And likewise, finding positive things in the middle of adversity makes people happy and it makes people successful. All right, so now I want to check in with you. I've done a lot of talking. What's been most interesting for you so far? Just go ahead and type that into the chat box. What's been most interesting to you so far in this webinar? I can grab a quick glass of water here. We have one comment here. Thank you for the reminder regarding sincere appreciation. You're most welcome. Appreciation for oneself. I apparently have been giving myself positive affirmations without really realizing it. Awesome, Ryan. I can choose to be the person I wish I were. It's terrific. Tips on staying positive. Yeah. Michelle, it's more difficult to articulate negative versus positive, but well worth it to train ourselves to remain positive. Well said. Mark, 100 successes. Great idea to get you to understand and appreciate your successes. Everything. I tried to get my youngest sister who just passed the bar to hop on, but she couldn't make it. Thank you. Reminder that we can change our attitudes and mindset. Yes, exactly. Initial theory about attitude driving action. I don't think I got it right, but I think you know what I mean. Yep, thoughts driving action. Yeah. I think that goes along with attitude. You know what? I'm going to have to pay you $5 for that comment, Lee, because that is coming up. Yes. Michelle, love this. Don't wade in the pity pool. Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Awesome. Great, guys. Thank you for that. So with that in mind, I did say at the beginning that we were going to discuss 4 keys to surviving a crisis or 4 keys to overcoming adversity. So as Lee mentioned, we just kind of talked about the first one, attitude. The law of self-control is really important. Yeah, exactly. The law of self-control is, it's all about attitude at the end of the day, and it's all about, your thoughts. But there's more because we got to go through 3 more keys. So the second one is hope, right? We have to have hope for a better future. That's the fuel that keeps us going. And I want to illustrate how hope is required, really, to making positive change happen. So I'm going to go ahead and jump on my iPad here. All right, so that was the law of self-control. I'm going to move up here, and we're going to cover what's called Gleicher's formula. And it's Gleicher's formula for change. By none other than David Gleicher. Now, don't worry, we're not going to use any numbers, even though it's written as a formula. So I promise you there's not going to be any headache-inducing math or anything like that here. But this formula was created to talk about why some organizations are able to change successfully and why other organizations fail to change successfully. And it turns out that this formula has a ton of applications. I use it for business development. You can use it for determining if initiatives are going to be successful or not. You can use it for determining anything where a change needs to occur. And the formula is super simple. And here it is. D times V times F is greater than R, right? D times V times F is greater than R. And here's what these things say. So dissatisfaction times positive vision times first steps has to be greater than resistance to change. So what this is basically saying is that in order to, when anyone is expected to make a change, whether it's to make changes in their firm or make changes in their individual performance, anything like that, there's a resistance to change. If it's a small change, there's little resistance. If it's a big change, there's a lot of resistance. And in order for that change to be successful, we have to overcome the resistance, and there's 3 ways to do that. Dissatisfaction with their current situation, being number 1. Number 2 is a better vision for the future, otherwise known as hope. And the third are concrete first steps to go from your current state, which is dissatisfied, to this more positive vision for the future. The only reason really it's written as a formula, well, I guess there's 2 reasons it's written as a formula. The first is that the greater the resistance, the stronger these 3 elements need to be in combination with each other to overcome the resistance. The other reason is it's written as multiplication for a reason, because if one of these goes to 0, the whole thing goes to 0. So let's say there was no dissatisfaction with their current situation. Well, if they're not dissatisfied with their current situation, how likely are they to change? They're not, okay? What about if there's no vision or hope for the future? If they don't think things can get any better, why bother making a change, right? So change doesn't happen. Or if there's no concrete first steps, so yeah, my situation sucks. Yeah, I can totally see how it's going to get better, but I don't have any idea how to get from here to there. Again, change doesn't happen. So all 3 of these things need to be present. Okay, and that's called Gleicher's formula for change. And the hope element really comes in this vision piece. Okay. Let me go and stop the share here. All right, so we've talked about 2 of the keys to adversity, to overcoming adversity, attitude and hope. So what I'd like you to do, we just talked about Gleicher's formula, dissatisfaction and positive vision. what I'd like you to do is do a quick exercise. In the chat box, type 2 things. What are you currently dissatisfied with, number 1? And given that, what is your positive vision for the future, number 2? So we're trying to address the 2 elements of Gleicher's, the dissatisfaction and the positive vision. And the positive vision is the hope, of course. So just type it in the chat box real quick. What are you currently dissatisfied with? And what is your positive vision of how it can be better? Okay? If you want to pick one thing, that would be ideal. And while you guys are typing that in, I can take a quick sip of water here. So we've got a couple of ones coming through, dissatisfaction. I'm going to keep these anonymous. Clients delay pulling the trigger. Okay. Income. Yeah. Clients reluctant to pay for services due to their own financial difficulties. Right. Yes. The general state of immigration and what's going to happen if we reelect Trump. And then moving over to the positive vision of the future, increase income. COVID-19 kind of loosening up, so shelter in place loosening up. So client income can increase and therefore they'll pull the trigger. Yeah, hopefully Trump loses the election. Okay. Yeah, a lot of things coming through about hearings being delayed. Yep. Very nice. Great. This is awesome, guys. Clients will start returning to work, so they'll start generating income. Yep, yep. Nope, that's really good. Yeah. Okay, great, guys. Thank you very much. So we're going to go ahead and continue on. So we've talked about hope and attitude as 2 of the 4 keys to overcoming adversity. The third one is creativity. And creativity is really important because it's how you think out of the box, right? When we're hemmed in really tight, adverse situations, oftentimes we need creative solutions. And if anyone's seen Star Trek, they know exactly what I'm talking about, right? The Enterprise is going to blow up in like 30 seconds, and a bunch of people come up with this really crazy idea that we don't even understand to save the ship. And it happens every episode. But creativity is absolutely key to getting out of an adverse situation. And right now is a great example of that. I was just in a networking meeting this morning, and one of the attorneys there is taking up a lot of what she knows. And she runs a group called Lawyer Success Network, by the way, if you want to check it out on Facebook. But she's taking a lot of what she knows and boxing it up into courses that she can then sell for a relatively inexpensive price, and then potentially follow up with an in-person consult down the road, if that made sense. So there are lots of creative solutions that people are coming up with to get additional income in this situation, or to solve other challenges to the business and to themselves. And look no further than probably some of the creative solutions you've all come up with once the shelter in place orders went into effect. So you could work from home, right? Great examples of creativity. So it helps perhaps to have some techniques. At least it helps me. When I'm stuck in a box and I don't know how to work my way through it, a really adverse business situation, it helps for me to think of some things that really unleash creativity. And it helps my clients too. So I'm going to share those with you right now. So the first one is identify your assumptions and then tear them down. What do I mean by that? Well, we all have assumptions, and the assumptions we have about our business, about our law firm, and about our practice, oftentimes those are self-limiting assumptions. We think they're true. We're 100% convinced they're true. We just take them for granted. Of course, that's the way things are. Duh. But as it turns out, those are also blocking our creativity. Okay. And so identifying some of these basic assumptions that you have, you need to say, well, of course that's the case. And then removing them, getting rid of them. Just as the thought exercise, so you can see what other solutions might be out there. So maybe writing down a list of assumptions and then putting them all aside and saying, okay, what if those things weren't true? What does that mean for my business? What does that mean for my practice? And so I'll give you an example that I hear quite a bit. Example is I can't afford to hire. You know, we're in a tough situation. I just can't afford to hire. It's just not going to work. Well, okay, if that's the assumption, because maybe revenues are down, maybe clients are hard to find, what if that wasn't true? So how much would it cost to hire somebody? And by hiring that person, what could the impacts be for your law firm? And are there other ways, perhaps ways to bring them on board? Maybe you bring them on board at a reduced rate now with a promise to increase their rate down the road. So thinking through some of those things, you may discover, particularly if hiring the person would allow the rainmakers in your firm to generate a whole lot more business or be more effective generating business, you might find out that you can't afford not to hire. Second technique, apply no compromise constraints. And I've done this a lot in my own practice and in the practice of my clients. One of the things that my clients really want is they want to take more time off. And so we apply a concept called the Paradise Planner for that. And they're also interested in increasing their income while doing that. And so we apply some other techniques for that too. But what's interesting is my clients love to have their cake and eat it too. Yeah, they want to take more time off, but they also want to increase their income. And I've heard a lot of attorneys say, well, that's not possible. If you want to increase your income, you got to work more hours. Okay. So stating it and saying, how can I do this, forces us to think about really out of the box ideas that are going to achieve both of these competing things. They're going to get us to think about ideas that can increase our income without making us work any harder. They're going to get us to think about ideas about maybe increasing our income while working fewer hours. So these kinds of constraints that seem really, really tight or conflict with one another, putting those in place and then conducting a brainstorming exercise can be really effective at coming up with some out-of-the-box ideas. The third and final one I'm going to leave you guys with is getting desperate. Desperation is a breeding ground for creativity. I think we all know that instinctively. And also, by the way, it's totally okay, not only in times like this, but in any time, to be an opportunist, right? So just to figure out, hey, what's actually working for me now? And how can I capitalize on it? What other opportunities are there out there right now that I'm not considering that I could capitalize on? Okay. Seeing opportunity and seizing it is what an opportunist does. It's also what a great strategist does. So just type in the chat box now, out of these three creative techniques, what technique would you like to try? Is it number 1, number 2, or number 3? Got some 3s, we've got some 1s. Cool. Yeah, number 2, yeah, that's my favorite also. That's why I took July off last year. Yeah, okay, great. A good mix of lots of 1s, lots of 3s, and a few 2s. So that's awesome. Okay, guys, great. Next thing here, real quick, I just want to check in with you. Based on everything we've covered so far, what's been most valuable for you? Let's go ahead and type that in the chat box. What have you found most valuable so far? Gleischer's formula. Yeah, love that one too. We got some votes for the Law of Self-Control as well. So some votes for Gleischer's, some votes for the Law of Self-Control. Radical change lies within our minds, not out there somewhere. Yes, 80% of our limitations, by the way, are internal. Only 20% are external. Identifying assumptions and tearing them down. Fantastic. Ryan says it explains why I've always hated change for change's sake. Yeah, didn't have the dissatisfaction on my part. Right. Yeah, otherwise it's just why are they wasting your time? Awesome. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and move on. Reminder to stay on a creative trajectory and who I want to be direction. Yeah, love it. Yeah, creativity is key. So we've covered hope, attitude, and creativity. There is one more key that we need to put in place here to overcome adversity. And that key, and this probably won't surprise you, is action. Okay, without action, nothing happens. So with that in mind, you don't need to type this in the chat box, but just maybe keep it in your mind. Identify one important action for your firm that you should be taking, but you're not. Okay? So think about one important action for your firm. It's really important. It's for your firm, and you should be taking it. You should be doing it, but you're not. We all have those. Okay. I'm going to give you guys a few seconds to think through that. And once you have the action in mind, just go ahead and type in a quick yes, and we'll continue on. All right, great. Thank you guys. All right, so I think everyone's got something, or hopefully enough of you do. So let's go ahead and move on. So action's interesting. A lot of what we do as business coaches is get clients to take action. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about what makes people actually take action and what's getting in the way of people taking action. And so it turns out we come up with a few different techniques, and I use these techniques quite a bit to work with my clients so they can actually take action. So the first thing, and I'd love for you guys to type the answer to this in the chat box, is for the action you're thinking of, whatever that action is, but for the action you're thinking of, why are you hesitating or why are you procrastinating to take that action? The reason I ask the question is if we can identify the cause of the delay, which is number one there, we can talk about how to overcome it. So for the action you're thinking, why are you hesitating or procrastinating? If you could just type that into the chat box, and we will keep those responses confidential. All right, they're starting to come through now. Too expensive, okay. Busy with other things, yep, get that a lot. Spend too much time envisioning it, perhaps out of fear of taking the first step. Yeah, I love that second piece there, out of fear of taking the first step, because then you're kind of committed and you're heading down that path, and that can be scary. So we've got spending too much time thinking about it, fear of taking the first step, too expensive, busy with other things. Okay. Anything else? Okay, lack of motivation. Yeah, that's another one. Yeah, too busy to take the first step. I get that a lot. Okay, so usually what I do is I actually dig a lot deeper than that, but that's good enough for now. So the second thing that might be helpful is to think about a worst case, best case, and likely case of doing the action. So in things where there's some fear component to it, you're worried that things aren't going to work out, or you're worried it's too expensive, you're not going to get a return on your investment, or you're worried about something else, a client's going to get upset with you. What's the worst case? Like the worst case, what's the worst that could happen? Right? Typically, I would ask you to write that down, but I'll just ask you to think about it. What's the worst that could happen? Like the absolute worst case, total disaster. What's the worst that could happen? Okay. Now think about what's the best case scenario? What's the absolute best that could happen? So as extreme as you were with the worst case, be that extreme with the best case. Okay. And once you understand, the best case in your mind, you've got the worst case and the best case. What's the most likely? It's probably somewhere in the middle. What's the most likely case to occur? So sometimes just thinking through that, worst case, best case, and then the most likely case can really help you either decide to do it or decide not to. But either way, you've made a decision and that action is either being executed on or you've struck it off the list and you don't have to worry about it anymore. The third thing is smaller steps. And this is really important, especially if you get really busy with doing other things. We've all heard the saying, how do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time. So if you have a task that's important for you to do and you're not taking action on it, maybe it just needs to be a smaller action. So I'll give you an example. I am working with an attorney who is doing a lot of business, for business development purposes primarily. And this COVID-19 thing hit. All of his business development comes from networking. He doesn't really get anything from anything else. And so he was really concerned about, bringing in cases because he can't go out there and network in person. And so we came up with a plan where he was going to basically call his network, right? And we set up a whole plan and a whole scheme behind that he would actually execute, and he didn't do it. And we talked about why he didn't do it. And as it turns out, he just really wasn't comfortable. He was about picking up the phone. He was worried about what might happen. So we identified the cause of the delay. He was worried about two things. He was worried about that they might not welcome the call, number one. He was worried that it was going to waste his time because he's not going to get anything out of it, number two. And the third is he's worried about the long-term impact that would have on his network if he's calling them up and basically holding out his hand asking for more work. So that gave us a lot of things to work with. We were able to identify, the worst case, best case, and the likely case. In his worst case scenario, we addressed by changing how he was going to approach those calls. So it's not sleazy. He's not holding his hand out. He's calling to check in and see how they're doing. Okay, that's it. But it still wasn't getting done. And so what I finally said is, all right, well, if you're really uncomfortable about making those calls still, what if you just actually, looked up the person in your phone, got their number and wrote it out? Can you do that? That way you don't have to pick up the phone. And if you're not comfortable calling them, just keep adding to your list. But just, today, take an hour, get those names, write out the numbers, and make it happen. It was funny, last time we checked in, he goes, you know what, that was really annoying. I was getting so upset with myself that I got the name, got the number, but was just chickening out of making the call. I just started making the calls. And it worked out okay. So sometimes taking just that first small step, if you guys are fans of James Clear, he's a really big, popular author on habits. I love his stuff. He's really big into taking small steps, and that really works. The idea of laying out your gym clothes in the morning, but not forcing yourself to go to the gym. So those are 3 different techniques that you can do to take action. So what I'd like you to do is, what's one small step for this action that you have in mind? What's one small step that you can actually take today? Go ahead and just think through that. What's one small step that you can take today? All right, so we've talked about the 4 keys now to overcoming adversity: attitude, hope, creativity, and action. And we need all 4 of these to overcome. It's a little bit like glaciers. If you're missing one, you're not going to be able to overcome the adversity most likely. You need to have a strong, positive attitude. Otherwise, nothing else is going to happen. You have to have hope for a better future. Otherwise, you're not going to do anything. You have to have creativity so you can come up with some unusual solutions, because what's working now isn't getting it done. And you need to have an action orientation, really take action. Otherwise, you can have all the other 3 things, but you won't make any forward progress. Okay? So we've covered a lot of ground today, and I want to bring this home for you. So we're going to do one last exercise called crossing the gap, where we really identify where you want to go. That's going to be your point B. Then we're going to figure out where you are. That's your point A. And that creates a gap from where you are to where you want to be. Okay. And what we want to do is figure out a way to cross that gap. So what I'd like you to do, just go ahead and think through, what do you want the most in your firm more than anything else? And just type it in the chat box. Is it more income? Is it more time off? Is it less stress? Or is it something else? Whatever it is, what you want the most in your firm more than anything, type that in your type that in the chat box right now. Again, I'm going to keep these responses confidential. So we've got more income. Well, I want to take a vacation. Yeah. Steady workflow at the desirable amounts. Okay. More clients for all attorneys at the firm. Yeah. More income, and less hours. Okay. Great. Great. Yeah, those are all awesome. Great. So given where you are now, so that's where you want to go, right? Or that's where you want your firm to go. But given where you are now, or where your firm is now, what is one major obstacle? What is one major obstacle holding you back from achieving that? Type that obstacle into the chat box now. There may be other obstacles, but what's a big one? Starting to see some answers coming through here. Okay. A lot of people saying, well, you know, courts are closed. Stuck at home seems like a big deal. Yeah, that's right. More income. Oh, sorry, wrong one there. Spending too much time on administrative work versus billing work. Others like that. Basically, too much time spent on non-billable activities. Not looking at new networks for potential sources of referrals. Actions of other people who are not in my control. Okay. Got it. The tangerine tyrant. Well, you're going to have to explain to me what that is. Oh, that one. Yeah, our president. Right. Got it. Okay. If you could remove that obstacle, or all the obstacles that are in your way to achieve it, and actually achieve that goal, how would you feel? Right. So if you needed more income, if you needed a different president, if you need to come up with some new networks or some new business development tactics, just if we could wave a magic wand and remove all those obstacles so you could achieve what you want, how would you feel? Just go and type a quick one-word answer into that chat box. Incredible. Yeah, that's what we're looking for. If the answer is okay, then you probably want something more in your firm. Relieved. Yeah. Good. Okay. Good. Good is good. If that only makes you feel good, then think about what would make you feel great. A couple of relieved. Yep. Yep. Awesome. Great. Thank you guys for sharing that with me. Okay, so I'm just checking the chat box here. Okay, so a good coach gives you a lot of the things we've talked about today. They give you, a positive attitude. They give you hope. They give you creativity with some out-of-the-box ideas, things you might not have thought of. And they drive you to action to remove those obstacles so that you can get to that next level faster and easier than you could on your own. That's exactly what a good coach should be doing. And so what we do is we're experts when it comes to helping small law firms and attorneys reach that next level. So whether they want more income, more time off, less stress, their perfect practice. We don't work with everyone. We only take clients who really connect with this manifesto that you're seeing on your screen. So go ahead and take a read through this manifesto real quick. And if this sounds like you, just type yes into the chat box. And what I'll do is I'll reach out and we'll schedule a short call with you. Oh, yes, thank you. Yeah, how you can get a copy of this recording. So what I will do is I just need to edit this a little bit. And so I'll edit it and then I'll make the recording and the slides available on my website. I think you hopefully already have a login to the website. If not, just go to lawyerbusinessadvantage.com, click on the free resources tab, and you can sign up for a free account, which will give you access to the video and the slides. So that's how you can get all of that. Again, lawyerbusinessadvantage.com, and click on the free resources tab. If you already have an account, give me a couple of days and we'll get it loaded on there for you.